All right, welcome to the Broe Show. Today we're going to talk about EMFs, electromagnetic fields, or EMR, electromagnetic radiation, some people call it. And these are fields of influence that are radiated from electronic devices, from power lines, from microwave devices. They come from space, they come from a variety of different sources, a lot of them man-made. And these affect our nervous system, they affect our cells, our mitochondria, the power plants in all our cells. And they affect their ability to produce energy to perform all the physiologic functions in our body. They affect our behavior, they affect our neurotransmitters, all kinds of influences, but we're going to talk about these today. So we're going to be the EMFers.
All right.
The most common fields that we are exposed to are the power line frequencies. I mean, these have been around for a long time. The 60 cycle in the United States, 50 cycle in Europe. This is how many times a second the polarity changes of the power that's coming in to power our houses and our industries and things. So these pulses that they create, there's a pulse on the positive and there's a pulse on the negative. And so you get two pulses per waveform. And so if you have a 60 cycle per second power system, then you're going to have 120 pulses per second. And this you can see in just our regular lighting. You have a light bulb. If you videotape it on a high-speed, with a high-speed camera and then play it back at regular speed, you'll see the light flickering on and off. This happens 120 times a second, so our eye doesn't notice that it's flickering, but our nervous system definitely notices it. And this creates stress in our body. With the electromagnetic fields that come off of the wires, when you have a current going through a wire, you have a magnetic field, you have electrical current with a magnetic field coming out 90 degrees from the polarity of the plane of the current. So it's coming out from the wires, and then if we're in proximity to those, it interfaces with our nerves. Our nervous system is like a high gain antenna, and each nerve fiber is like a tuned antenna and resonates, and then it gets amplified into our nervous system, right into our brain, and creates stress. It creates physiologic stress in our bodies. And one of the effects that's really common is lack of sleep. It affects our sleep cycles. It affects our melatonin in our body, just like artificial light does. Blue light destroys melatonin. So we need melatonin for sleeping. It's also a potent antioxidant in the body, repairs the mitochondria. So we don't want to be destroying it. We want to be trying to preserve what we have and even making more of it. But these electromagnetic fields interfere with that. Even when you're in the correct lighting, it's still, with applied kinesiologic testing, will cause a global weakening of all your muscles when you're exposed to it. So these fields are everywhere. They're part of our wireless internet system. In 1995, the internet went from a hardwired internet to a wireless internet. So our world has changed ever since. And then now we have people carrying two-way microwave transmitters called cell phones, and we have Wi-Fi everywhere. People, you see signs, free Wi-Fi. It's in all the restaurants, most of your stores, places of business. It's in schools. Most people have a Wi-Fi router in their home. If you live in an apartment building or a condominium where there's people next to you, above you, below you, you're getting all of their Wi-Fi signals as well. You can tell that when you turn on your phone. If you have a smartphone and set it on Wi-Fi, and you'll see all the potential signals that your phone is picking up. So your nervous system is also picking those up. So these are affecting us 24/7, and the effects of these accumulate and create degenerative conditions in our bodies. So we want to talk about some more about what these devices are, and then how to mitigate this, how to do hacks, mitochondrial hacks, to protect your body from the adverse effects of these fields.
Would you say this is harmful? You know, we're talking about electro and magnetic, a frequency, and you know, we've been in these fields. You know, we have the 60 cycle wiring in our homes. We have lighting. We have electronic appliances and motors and fans. How, you know, maybe if we can try to explain a little bit more how this affects individuals. You know, you said it speeds up aging. It affects our mitochondrial DNA. It affects the way we function. Is this just because of this electromagnetic field? Do we think about it something like radiation, like nuclear radiation? You know, how can somebody get their head around how to think about it? Because it's invisible. You can't see it, smell it, feel it. You know, you can't really, you can feel the effects of it, but you can't just like go into a field and go, oh, you know, that's cold or that's hot or something. There's not ways to perceive it. So can you explain a little bit more on how that impacts our cells?
Well, some people are really sensitive to these electromagnetic fields, and it's called electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And the more you're exposed to these fields, the more sensitive you tend to get. And just your exposure, just like with mercury, the more exposure to mercury you get, you become hypersensitive to it, and then you react even more to it than you did before.
But why do we react to it?
Well, it creates stress in our bodies. Effects are more recently, actually, with the advent of microwave devices, the wavelength of the frequency is much shorter because the frequency is much higher than what we have been, compared to 60 cycle per second power line fluctuations. Imagine 2.45 gigahertz. Okay, let's talk about hertz.
Maybe we should explain that, right? Megahertz, you know, gigahertz.
A hertz is named after a person that named Hertz, and it means cycles per second. So if you had 1 cycle per second, imagine you had a vibrating guitar string, and you pluck that and it vibrates so many times a second, depending on how tight it is and the length of it. So imagine if it did 1 cycle per second, that wave coming off, traveling at the speed of sound would be very long. And if you did 100 cycles per second, the wavelength would be 100 times smaller to fit 100 of them in the same space in the same amount of time. So the wavelength changes as the frequency goes up. So as that string vibrates faster, the wavelength gets shorter. Now, if we change that to radio frequencies or light frequencies, the wavelengths are extremely small, and they're measured in nanometers or or millimeter wavelength, very small. And these penetrate into and affect our cells. It could be the ion channels, the gates in the cell membranes that open and close and allow electrolytes to go in and out of the cells. Those can be affected. The mitochondria, which are the power plants of the cells, we have up to 1,000 of these in every cell. They produce a substance that is the energy currency for the body called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. So in the process of making ATP is the electron transport chain, it's called. And in the inner mitochondrial membrane, we have specialized proteins, the respiratory proteins called cytochromes. And these are light sensitive, and they tunnel the electrons that are a part of this mechanism. And the color of the light or the frequency of electromagnetic radiation affects the function of these, and it can basically turn off the power production in the cells, in the mitochondria. So what happens when that happens? All of our muscles get weak. Physiologic processes that depend on ATP don't function. Like your immune system can't function, your digestion, your respiration, everything suffers. Your heart, your thoughts, everything are affected when the mitochondria are turned off. So it can have wide-reaching manifestations, depends on the individual and where the weak links in your chains are. It's where it manifests first.
Right. Don't the mitochondria also make water? One of the
They do.
To make water. So if that is happening, if we have a lot of disruptive electromagnetic fields, wouldn't that tend to dehydrate them?
Yes, it would. Exactly. Good point. Our mitochondria work the opposite of how chloroplasts work in plants. When you have chlorophyll, and what they do is they take carbon dioxide and water and make sugars.
The chloroplasts.
The chloroplasts.
In the plants, right.
Plants.
Right.
So we eat those sugars, and then our mitochondria work the opposite way. They take the sugar and break it down, and we give off carbon dioxide and water and make ATP. So
that's huge. You know, just knowing that we are going to become dehydrated every cell, and you can see the far-reaching health effects of that effect. Okay, that alone. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. You know, if somebody can get their head around these invisible frequencies affecting their cells' energy and ability to make water and to be hydrated. So there's two huge reasons why you want to start understanding this topic, understanding what an electromagnetic field is, where they are, and how to neutralize them or get around them or minimize or reduce your exposure to these.
exactly. And because they're invisible, it really helps to have meters. Like this is a tri-field meter. It's called, this is the older analog meter. They have newer digital versions. But this will detect electrical fields, magnetic fields, and microwaves, and give you a readout on the display here.
That can show you how strong that field is?
Exactly. It measures in milligauss. It's a magnetic measurement. And then we have this high-frequency meter. It's gigahertz solutions, HF35C. It has a high-gain directional antenna on it. And you can detect pinpoint sources of radio frequencies in your workplace, in your home, wherever. When you're driving, you can, as soon as the trees open up and you get a line of sight to a cell tower, you'll get a immediate response, and it has a speaker on it, so it makes a sound, as you can hear.
Horrible sound. horrible.
Right, you can hear like what the nervous system is hearing all the time. So this is really handy. And we use these when we do audits on people's homes and businesses to find these hot spots, these hidden areas. And then we have our Geiger counter. It's called Inspector Alert. And this has a very large sensor on it. And we can use this to show people how their granite countertops are radioactive. Their ceramic floor tiling is radioactive. Their bathroom tiles are radioactive. The only thing that we found isn't is the marble. We went to Lowe's and to Home Depot and checked all of theirs, and they all are putting out at least double background radiation or more. So meters are really handy because it can show you these invisible fields. Another way you can detect these is through kinesiologic manual muscle testing. The body will react like a meter, where if it's previously strong and you introduce a noxious influence like one of these fields, or if you held a cell phone that's turned on, for instance, it will create a global inhibition of the muscles, and you can feel that happen. You can move it closer or farther away, and you can feel the body's response. So that's another way of detecting these invisible fields, but most people don't know how to do that, and they don't have these meters, so they don't realize how many of these fields that they're exposed to.
I got a page of an audit that when we go to find these for people, but there's just a kind of a checklist. Let me read a few things here. Do you own a cell phone? Do you own a laptop? Do you have a tablet? Do you have a desktop computer? Is it connected to Wi-Fi? Do you have one of the fitness tracker watches, the Apple Watch, or other wireless wearable devices? Do you have a Wi-Fi network in your home, in your business? Does it have a Wi-Fi router? Wireless phones. Do you have any wireless phones? Do you have a baby monitor? Video game console? Wireless virtual assistant like Alexa and Siri or whatever? Digital media player? A smart TV? A smart printer? Other smart appliances, refrigerator, freezer, oven, washer, dryer, which can be connected via Bluetooth. So your toaster can text you when your toast is ready.
Your toast.
Yeah, your toast. A wireless sound system, a smart meter, a utility meter, a microwave oven, dimmer switches, compact fluorescent bulbs, the curly ones or the long tubes, LED light bulbs, radiant electrical heating system, the underfloor heating, solar panels, wind turbines, an electric car, and a battery charging station. Those car battery charging stations, huge fields. See, a home alarm system. Okay, those are just the common ones. So then we also look at, is your home within 150 feet or less of high voltage power lines? Is there a cell tower within the line of sight from your home? Are you situated within a mile of an AM, FM digital TV broadcast station? What about those, the weather, the Doppler radar stations too?
Radar is huge. We've got the Klystron 9 here it goes, we're in that field. It's going by every so many seconds. And then all the local airports, they have their radar.
Yeah, airport, military base, police, fire station or hospital, a solar park or wind turbine park, a railway station or subway station. These are huge, and then how about at school, schools and workplaces, there's wireless everywhere, and there's sometimes those cell towers, in schools and churches.
They're hidden everywhere.
Yep. And then again, like you mentioned, in an apartment, or a townhouse or anything like that, you've got people now all around you that have all of their devices. So we're in a sea now of this all of a sudden. I mean, it just kind of came on relatively quickly, you know, with Wi-Fi. It was just recently that it pretty much got everywhere. The last, what, like 3 years, maybe, that it all of a sudden.
3 to 5 years.
You know, they're going in, you know, people's homes and switching out their cable box and putting in, you know, the wireless ones, and people don't have a clue. They just like, okay, you know. We were doing an audit at somebody's house. They had 3 routers in their office.
On at the same time.
On, yeah. Right. So this is like very, very damaging, very huge. And again, because it's invisible is what makes it very insidious and very evil, because you don't know what's happening. All of a sudden things start going wrong in your body. You know, as Bobby mentioned, one of the bigger things is sleep. You know, we're really finding sleep is a huge problem with people. People cannot sleep. And then they're wired at night. I mean, wired out, you know, they're hyper awake, which makes it even worse, so that they're awake when they shouldn't, and then they're tired when, you know, opposite of what they should be. They're tired during the day and want to sleep during the day, and then opposite at night. So it's a
people that work night shift, people that work at night when they should be sleeping, they have circadian mismatches, they're called. And they should be outside in the light. They're sleeping, they're inside.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of people that don't work graveyard are inside where they should be outside also. We spend 93% of our time indoors now, on average. But I wanted to talk about other parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. Includes visible light and infrared and ultraviolet light. So it's a form of EMF also, but sunlight is native, natural EMF, where our artificial lighting is non-native, man-made EMF. And our current efficient lighting, especially LED lighting, which came on the scene, I guess it was Obama's quantitative easing 2 brought in all the LED TVs and all the push for LED lighting. They made incandescent lighting evil, and you know, you had to get the compact fluorescents first. And so these put out a different color spectrum than sunlight, which is what we're wired for. We spent thousands of years being exposed to natural sunlight. So the indoor lighting, these artificial bulbs put out more of the blue color. And blue is not found in nature by itself. There's always red there with it to balance it. But when you have these light bulbs, TVs, laptops, you know, the monitors, the
Kindles, iPads,
all your tablets, all that stuff, they're all made with LEDs now. They're all putting out this blue light that turns off your mitochondria, again, like I mentioned with the electromagnetic fields. So the respiratory proteins in your inner mitochondrial membrane are they're called chromophores. They're light sensitive. And you need red light for cytochrome C oxidase to function. And if you just have the blue, it actually destroys many physiologic compounds like DHA in your brain and in your eye, destroys serotonin, dopamine, melatonin.
Well, there you go. That's huge. Just that right there. No melatonin, no sleepy.
So the way we make melatonin is by being outside in the sunlight in the morning when ultraviolet A shows up around 10 o'clock, where we live here in Florida. That turns on the production of melatonin, serotonin, and dopamine right in your eye itself. And the retinal pigmentum epithelial cells, they have melanin granules that produce these neurotransmitters right in the eye itself. Now, if you aren't outside at that time, or if you are outside but wearing sunglasses or contact lenses or regular glasses, you're going to filter the ultraviolet light. See, we've been made to be afraid of ultraviolet light, and it's really essential.
We shouldn't have sunglasses and sunscreen all over?
That's right. So think of the sun as the source of life in our whole solar system. And we're being made to be afraid of the source of life. It's like we are made to be afraid of cholesterol.
Yep.
Brains and nervous systems need copious amounts of it. Steroid hormones need cholesterol. It's part of our biochemistry, and we've been made to be afraid of it. Salt, the minerals in salt, we need 60 minerals every day. And we've been made to be afraid of salt, and given the refined the refined salt that only has 2 minerals, sodium and chloride. So everything is way out of balance, and we've been made to be afraid of things that are essential to our health.
Right. You mentioned about the lighting and the sunscreen, and how we've been made to feel afraid of that. And people will say, well, there's tests done showing that ultraviolet radiation is harmful. But weren't those tests done with an artificial source of light in the laboratory, not with natural lighting sources?
Exactly. So when you, what they don't tell you is that 80% of that sunscreen gets oxidized by the sun and gets absorbed into the body and causes inflammation, which is the basis for all degenerative diseases is inflammation.
And women's makeup, like, foundation, almost all of it they put sunscreen in it. It's hard to find without.
Right.
I mean, there's just things like that are inherent, and people just go about doing these things and don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. They put their sunblocker stuff all over them. They put their what are those, Ray-Ban sunglasses on or something to look cool, and don't go outside and are around all these Wi-Fi sources and then think that their vegan diet or the whatever diet or the supplements or something are really the key to their health, but it's really part of the demise.
Exactly. So by not being outside, we used to wake up with the sun and go to sleep with the sun pretty much. And now we live inside in houses, and we have artificial light. We've extended our day by having artificial light, which has affected us in many ways. It makes us think the day is longer, which means it's summertime, the way we're wired. That means winter's coming. That means we need to prepare for hibernation and lack and famine. So it makes us crave carbohydrates to eat, to put us into insulin resistance so that we build up a fat pad. It raises our cholesterol, which we need for our cell membranes so they don't freeze during hibernation.
So this prepares you for winter, basically.
Right. But basically winter never comes because we're always in these long days because we extended the day with artificial light at night.
So people keep putting on more fat pads.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And then they start to say, well, I got to get rid of this fat. I'm going to start a
diet. I got to go run and exercise.
Start running. Right. And when you run, your body thinks you're being chased. So it puts you in a fight or flight mode, which means your blood sugar goes up and you store more unburned sugar as fat and you get fatter.
More inflammation, more stress.
So it's crazy what we're doing. But the way we're wired is we should be outside when the sun rises. That starts what's called circadian biology. Circadian rhythm of the body is a 24-hour light-dark cycle that's based on the color temperature of the sun. Sun changes its color temperature through the day from sunrise to high noon to sunset. At sunrise, it's 1600 degrees Kelvin. At high noon, it's 5700 degrees Kelvin. And at sunset, it's 18,000 degrees Kelvin.
So we need a little sampling of those through the day, ideally, right? More like we need that morning initial sun, the rays in the very early to do certain things. That's the main.
Right.
That's the main one.
So when the light first hits our eyes, it turns on our production of hormones.
And melatonin, right? You want that when they sleep in the evening, so you got to go get that so you can sleep the next night.
Dopamine and serotonin, right? And so that turns on that process for a couple hours until ultraviolet A shows up, and that turns off that production.
Oh, so it's only available sunrise for the next 2 hours. So you better get your butt out and get a little bit of that light in your eyes and on your skin early in the morning. Ideally, right?
And that's where we make our melatonin. Now, when we go indoors, say we were outside and we made melatonin, remember, it's the nighttime hormone that we need for sleep. After the sun goes down, the body, about 4 hours later, starts to secrete melatonin, and it makes us go to sleep. But if we are sitting in front of a LED TV under fluorescent or LED artificial lighting, that tells our brain it's the same color temperature as high noon. Tells our brain that it's high noon, so our circadian rhythm changes to that of midday. Our cortisol cycles change, everything shifts, and then we try to go to bed after that and try to go to sleep, and we just can't do it. But
can't fool Mother Nature.
The blue light itself destroys any melatonin that you might have made if you were outside making it.
Okay, so you get a finite amount made if you get out and get that. And then if you're indoors with light after the sun sets, like you got a lot of lights on, or you got a bright TV, or you're looking at your phone or your iTablet or your Kindle or something, and then it's eating that up. If you had this much to start with, it's like, yeah. Oh.
Right. You need total darkness for the pituitary to turn off and the pineal gland to turn on. It takes 4 hours of darkness before the melatonin can even start to work. So
nobody's sleeping.
If you get up in the middle of the night to pee and you happen to turn on the light, or you have a night light, especially LED, or if you look at your device while you're up, boom, now you're at high noon and you can't go back to sleep. So
how about all the little lights on and all the appliances and everything? We got all these little indicator lights.
All the little pilot lights, especially the blue ones, yeah. All of that should be covered with some black electrical tape or something.
A handy whiteout or something. Right. Nail polish.
So it doesn't take much to trigger that mechanism.
Oh yeah, tell the thing.
You have an LED clock in your bedroom. That could be enough to keep your pituitary from turning off and your pineal gland from turning on, and for melatonin being able to work.
So you shouldn't lay in bed with the TV on and go to sleep with a couple lights, maybe bedside your bed. You got your cell phone right here and the TV on. That's no good?
No good.
Can't do that.
Any electromagnetic devices within 8 feet or more of your body while you're sleeping. So
the days of watching Johnny Carson or Jay Leno in bed is over.
Yeah, we shouldn't be doing that.
Over.
Now, if you are exposed to blue light after sunset, there's a Mito hack. It's called blue blocking glasses you can wear to block the blue that would turn off and destroy the melatonin. But your skin is also sensitive. It has melanopsin receptors, blue light receptors, just like your eye. And so you have to cover your skin to protect you from the effects, the weakening effects of the blue light exposure also.
Forget it in summertime.
Right. So you have to crank down the AC and bundle up and put your blue blockers on if you need to watch that movie right before bed. So not a good idea. So we should be creating it's like sleep foreplay. We have to create an environment that's inducive to sleep. turn the lights down low, turn some music on, turn off the TV, anything like the
Hyper stimulating.
You're right. So
You mean we should wind down and go to sleep, and then in the daytime we should wind up and do daytime things? Really?
so think how we spent thousands of years. We were up with the sun and we went to sleep shortly after it got dark.
It's ridiculously simple, my dear Watson.
So nowadays, in Florida, for instance, when it was warm, we would go out on the front porch and drink sweet tea and talk to our neighbors and stuff. But now we go indoors into the AC or indoors in front of our devices, and we're not outside. We don't see the sunrise. We don't get the ultraviolet A. When we are outside, we wear sunscreen, we wear sunglasses or other filters. Also wanted to mention that the windows in our cars and the glazing in our windows in our homes block most of the infrared and all of the ultraviolet.
Of course.
So basically what you're getting is blue light coming through. So even if you don't have artificial lighting on, you don't have the LED TV, you're just indoors, you're getting blue light also.
Oh, we got Murphy's Law again here, you know.
Right.
You can't go wrong about it, Will. So just, it's the worst. Okay, so
you see all these people, these couch potatoes, are sitting in front of their LED TV and in their computer under artificial light, and they don't go outside, and they don't sleep at night. And a lot of them, they fall asleep in front of the TV because they're so exhausted.
it hypnotizes them to sleep, but they're not really deeply asleep. I mean, they're exhausted, and they're like, you know, but they're not getting a real restful sleep.
And everything you hear from all of those advertisements and everything goes unfiltered right into the subconscious.
Nice.
So the predominance of those signals you're getting are drug ads and junk food ads.
Okay, so wake up, America.
These light frequencies are other forms of electromagnetic fields that have a powerful effect on our body's health and our physiology. Physics trumps biochemistry. So if the physics in your environment aren't right, your biochemistry can't work right. So
you can take all the supplements all day long, and if you don't fix that,
you can't utilize.
You don't heal.
Your mitochondria aren't working. You don't digest. You don't assimilate. You don't eliminate. Nothing happens. You
have more inflammation, more cell, apoptosis, cell death prematurely.
Right.
That makes premature aging.
And you don't have autophagy happening, which is the renewal of the mitochondria in the cells. So the cells just burn out faster, and you age faster. And you mentioned the dehydration when the mitochondria are turned off. And so your cells get dehydrated, and your skin wrinkles, and you know.
Well, I drink water all day long.
Well, you need minerals to hold water in the cells, and most people are mineral deficient. Every time you pee and every time you sweat, you lose minerals. If people aren't replacing those minerals, they're not in the soil that the food they eat is grown in. And
they don't even have fish and seafood.
And if they do supplement, they're oftentimes getting synthetic or minerals that haven't gone through photosynthesis. In order to utilize minerals, they have to go through photosynthesis. They have to be charged with electrons from the photosynthetic process. So if you took a rusty nail, for instance, which has iron oxide on it, if you sucked on that nail to get iron, your body can't utilize it. Or if you took a piece of chalk, which is calcium carbonate, and you sucked on that piece of chalk to try to get calcium, your body can't use it. But if you put that into the soil of a plant, the microbes will break down those minerals and this plant will absorb them. And through photosynthesis, 1 photon of light becomes 2 electrons during photosynthesis, and those electrons then become part of the hydrogens in the water, and those minerals take on these electrons. And now they become bioavailable to the body, that now they're ready to do some work in the body. So when you get the right plant-based minerals that can turn on these functions and can hold the water in your cells, you can stay hydrated. But as soon as you go under the blue light, you're going to stop the production of the water in the cell itself.
So let's talk about one of the best sources of those minerals that we found is the longevity products. But the minerals come from the Rockland mines, and basically they're not in all of the products. It's a huge company, multi-level company. We'll put a link there, but it's a couple.
It comes from humic shale, which is broken down forest, and these forests had all these minerals in the trees that went through photosynthesis. So all those minerals still retain that charge, and they're still vital and usable by the body. But the Rockland mines has water deep enough to hold all of these minerals in suspension because of their specific gravity. A lot of these mines have shallow water, and they can't hold the heavier minerals in suspension, so you don't get them all. With the Rockland mines, it has to be over about 8 feet deep to get all those minerals. And,
isn't it like a mile deep?
well, it has to be at least 8 foot deep to be able to suspend all in a column all of the different minerals. So Rockland mines is deep enough to have all those.
And where is that located? That's in the United States. That's in Utah.
In Utah, right? Yeah. And Joel Wallach has exclusive rights to the Rockland minerals. So his products, the Tangy Tangerine that we like so well, has all 60 minerals that you need. And actually all of their products have all of those forms of minerals in them. But to assimilate minerals, you need to have a strong hydrochloric acid production in your stomach, because minerals are attached to proteins. They're chelated. They're like protein chaperones that bring minerals into the body. They have to be separated from those protein chelates in the stomach if you have a strong enough hydrochloric acid. Most people don't, because they don't have the minerals to make the hydrochloric acid. So there's a catch-22 where you need the minerals. You need calcium, chloride, and zinc to make hydrochloric acid, but you need hydrochloric acid to assimilate calcium, chloride, and zinc from the gut, from your diet, from your supplements. So when you get depleted of those, you can't make the hydrochloric acid to get more minerals back into your body. So you get stuck. That's why we use betaine hydrochloride to make hydrochloric acid. When you take those supplements, when you eat your meal, it helps you make the hydrochloric acid so you can break down your proteins, and you can also break down your minerals and make them ionizable and available to the body.
So if somebody were to have a good day, they could start by drinking their Tangy Tangerine, the powder, and you can mix it with water. And you get some morning sunlight in your eyes, 20 minutes.
You wouldn't want to take that under a blue lit artificial environment.
Right.
It inhibits your body's ability to utilize it.
Right. So you want to get outside, maybe get 15, 20 minutes of early sunlight, and then spot through the day if you can. Get some bright light exposure so your body knows it's day. Do all your day stuff during the day. Also, you can get apps for your devices and your phone that they're blue blocking devices and filters. You can move the brightness, but some of them actually block the blue. And some phones are you can dial it in the settings, and others you can buy the app. And on your computers, you can put the app on that dims that down. And then some of them have the smart setting. So during the day, you can see your screen a little bit, and at night, it's less. And you should be done. I mean, part of this whole thing is getting back in the rhythm of nature. I mean, still using technology and being in this world, but using it wisely. Now that things are forced upon us, we have to create an intelligent way to use this. But do the day activities during the day and go to sleep at night. I think we just we get stuck in this left brain ego mode of doing, And we forget that we're a human being. We're just so stuck on doing, accomplishing.
We become human doings instead of human beings.
Yeah, and we push ourselves and that we have to produce, but it really goes back to this ego-driven part of all of us that we have to get in check with. There's, it kind of puts the spiritual side things right up there, because we're seeing how this is creeping in on us and how it sucks you in. You get a phone and you're playing with it and you're checking it and you're putting stuff out, and it's like, really? We need to keep doing this all day? It's like, really? So I think it's a good point to look at this whole thing and see it from many different angles, not just the health part, but from the spiritual side. And it gives us a bigger picture. But hopefully we've shared a little bit about electromagnetic fields, lighting, natural lighting, how these creep up in our environment, and some things to do about it.
Right. Most people are dopamine deficient, and they get dopamine hits from their phone.
Because they're missing it from the main source, the sun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get it. Oh, someone messaged me. Oh, someone wants to get in touch with me.
Or liked my post.
Or I'm gonna take a selfie of myself and get a dopamine hit.
And then see who replied and give you a thumbs up or a heart.
Right.
Or whatever.
You get out in the sun and you make the dopamine, then you feel good. You don't need that. Yeah. And then if we meditate and things, people are afraid of the dark and
quiet.
What do I do without the TV on?
And all the thoughts in my head. I mean, I can not do that.
So we can meditate. We can have a greater light within that doesn't have adverse effects.
I think that's the key.
And so we just haven't been taught to do this. And so that's what we're trying to do. Other people are trying to do with their messages. So electromagnetic fields, they're invisible. They're very far-reaching in their effects. And if you learn how to identify them, how to avoid them, how to mitigate them, things like your router, it's on 24/7. Even if you're not on your computer, that thing is still broadcasting right now 2.45 gigahertz. And if you unplug it, at least when you go to sleep, that's a third of your life you spend in bed on average. So
ideally, it'd be better to hardwire your appliances in, hardwire your computer and your keyboard and your mouse.
That would be ideal. But even if just a third of your life was quiet, so to speak, then the other 2/3 are going to be better. But ideally, if you go back to Ethernet cables like we used to use, turn off the Wi-Fi, get rid of the wireless mouse and the wireless keyboard, get rid of that Fitbit or the Apple Watch, which is slamming you, weakening you. All these things, you're taking layers of stress off the body, off the tired horse, off the adrenal glands. And things start to change. So hopefully this has been insightful for you and answered a lot of questions that you might have, but the lack of sleep is the biggest offensive side effect that we've discovered from exposure to these electromagnetic fields and artificial light. So the lack of sleep undermines every process in the body. And that's our number one complaint in our practice for the last 10, 12 years now.
And it's getting worse every year.
So finally we have answers for people.
Yep. All right, so look for more. I want to talk a little bit more about this and other ones. I think it's important that people start to get their head around electromagnetic fields, where they are. I start to identify how many are in your environment and how many you can deal with, how many you can not have, how many you can change, how many you can mitigate and use more intelligently, not only in your home, but in your workplace as well.
Then you start to recognize when you're out somewhere, like I remember you were telling me you were in a restaurant with your friend and you felt, can you share that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was just feeling uncomfortable. I mean, I like, going out. We have a nice breakfast. Sometimes we'll go and talk about stuff, and and I just was feeling edgy, and I don't know why. I was just like antsy, and I looked all of a sudden right behind her head on the wall, like just where they walked through, was a cordless phone. So there was the phone and the base station. I mean, it was a little closer to her because she was sitting across the table from me. But I'm like, look at that. And
These have been around longer than routers, and they put out more stronger fields than a router. They're worse than the router, and the base station is transmitting 24/7.
Yep.
If you're using the handset, they're both two sources of microwave transmission within your house. And some people have more than one of these phones.
Yeah, this is a tough one for people. They don't want to give no, it's not true.
But you can just do a simple muscle test with it. If you turn all the stuff on.
Those meters really pick that stuff up.
Meters do too, but
bad.
When you feel your body being strong and all of a sudden it goes totally weak and you can't hold your arm up when you turn these things on or bring them in proximity to your body, that gets your attention and it makes sense, right?
Yep.
A meter is good too, but when you feel how weak it makes you, it definitely makes sense to you.
I've always been, I don't want to say hypersensitive to these because I've seen people that are, but I've always been sensitive to these. I think I have an inherent knowing of that's wrong, that's artificial, and I've always liked the sun. I've never put on sunscreen. I've always liked to be in it. I always like to watch the sunrise and sunset. Just always liked to do that. Always wanted to do those things. Never really liked computers and magnetic or electro appliances. I would prefer to cook outside. I like, natural lighting and like candles. I just naturally like those things. And the more people I talk to have those similar feelings, don't like the blue lights, didn't like the LEDs. When I tell people about this, yes, I didn't like them. They're just too bright and they're annoying and people get really upset. Sometimes you bring that up and they're like, I didn't know it. I'm like, whoa, good, you're right. You shouldn't like them. You're naturally responding in the right way to them. So.
And plus they pulse, they flash really fast, and the LEDs are much more pronounced. That's why they use LEDs for fiber optic communication, because they can turn on and off really fast. Where a filament bulb, the light persists after you turn it off as the filament is still glowing, and so it can only go on and off. It's so fast, but LEDs aren't limited by that, so they can be going on and off really fast, and that signal gets transferred through our eyes and our skin and have negative consequences. So it's not just the color temperature, but it's the pulsing of the light also that gives us a double whammy when we're in front of these devices.
So ideally, if as a takeaway today, if people could start, like if somebody wanted to do as much as they could, they can start by tracking with the sun, getting their natural rhythms with the sunrise and sunset. And it doesn't mean you got to go to bed at 8 o'clock or 5 o'clock or something, but definitely in the winter, you want to sleep more. And in the summer, you're awake more. It kind of naturally makes up for it. But anyway.
We spent thousands of years looking at campfires at night. So if you have a candle or an oil lamp, something that's continuous light, not flickering, and in the red, orange, yellow colors, none of the blue, then it's not going to have the weakening adverse effect on you.
But we want to definitely, get up with the sun, try to get that in your eyes and on your skin in the early part of the day. Go out in the sun or outside throughout the day at different times. Get the blue blocking things on all of your apps. Reduce your electromagnetic fields that you have and how many that you have. At night, if you replace all of your lighting, get rid of as many LEDs, sources, and retrofit those, and fluorescent and compact fluorescent. Retrofit all that with the old-fashioned incandescent bulbs, because they'll at least be better. There's not as much blue in them, so if you family, or the situation in your house, who knows, some are easier than others, but if you have to at least have those on, they're way less, way, way, way less. And then you can have your blue blocking glasses on and then try to go to bed, fairly early.
And ditch the Wi-Fi router, hardwire it with Ethernet cables like we used to.
Yep.
And cordless phones, get the hardwired phones like we used to have.
Yep.
Those are huge changes that really take layers of stress off the tired horse.
People don't realize how huge that is, because we've talked a lot about things through the years, supplements and detox and, getting amalgams out of your mouth and, whole cleansing regimens, big, big things. But it seems like not very impacting, but it is. I mean, and then retrofitting your lighting and doing those things I know some people, when I tell them, when we explain things in their visits and their consultations, they pause. They don't quite, it takes a bit to sink in. It's like, really, you're not going to set me up to go to the dentist, or we're not going to go get blood work, or we're not going to go get a dark field microscopy, or we're not going to get a thermograph. It's like, no. We're going to work with what you have right now that's wrong. Work with your environment. Work with this mismatch. Work with these insidious, invisible things, like when you started to talk about in the very beginning about these fields and identifying, these invisible sources of the problem.
You have to change the environment, like you said. You can't get healthy in the same environment that you got sick in. So we have to address that first, because nothing else will work if that is not addressed.
Right.
Physics trumps biochemistry. So
Yep.
we can handle the biophysics before we can utilize the biochemistry.
Yep.
And we haven't even talked about grounding being we spent thousands of years in touch with the earth, literally. Right. We slept on the ground. Other than humans and their pets, all other mammals still sleep on the ground or in touch with the ground.
Right. And we haven't talked about
humans and their pets are the only animals that get cancer, really, because it's an environmental effect, and they share the same environment.
Yeah, and people don't realize that their pets are affected with all this as well. They're getting this blue light, and they're getting all these Wi-Fi fields.
And they're insulated from the earth electrically. They don't wear shoes like we do, but our homes are electrically insulated in most cases from the earth. So we don't have the source of electrons flowing into our bodies, charging all of our little batteries. Our cells are like batteries. And that's where we get the electrons to, we get 2/3 of our electrons from the sun and the earth, only 1/3 from the food. So it's important that we have that. It's like putting your phone on the charger when you're in touch with the earth. Now they have mitohacks for that, with grounding pads for sleeping and straps and things like that, like we use in our clinic. But we don't use the electrical system ground like other people do, because of dirty electricity that comes through the neutral line, which is tied to the ground in the breaker panel.
Yeah, so we need to talk about a whole thing about that, and then also
we have our own ground rod, and so that's another thing, that you're going to flow electrons into the body. It's going to make you more alkaline, change your pH. It's going to make a huge difference in everything. So we'll talk more about that in a future podcast.
And then another one I wanted to mention, so we can put this out there to do the next one. There's the torsion fields on these electromagnetic fields, the left and the right spin. What you were talking about earlier in the beginning about the 90-degree rotation. So there's certain other anomalies and principles and things we'll talk about, but torsion fields are a way to harmonize these electromagnetic fields, and we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about shungite, and we'll talk about other devices that do harmonize these fields and how effective they are. So look for that in next podcast, and I hope this is interesting and you can take some of this home, literally.
All right. So keep the light shining. but not blue light.
Yeah. Sunlight.
All right.
Bye.